everyone, this is Ashley with CT Unit Digitals. I'm going to do a tutorial edit on one of my new digital backdrops, my white rooms and rinks. I'm going to do an edit for the backlit maternity swing image. I obviously already have my image open that I want to use. I have the digital open that I want to use as well, but I'm not gonna just copy and paste. I'm gonna use a different way to edit this to make it a little bit easier to switch between different rooms. So I have my image open. I'm gonna go up to File and Place Embedded, and then you can go ahead and navigate to the folder where your backdrops are saved. Make sure to unzip your folder before trying to open it into Photoshop, as Photoshop cannot open a zip folder. You have to unzip and save your file separately first. And then I know the room that I'm going to use is room 6. But if you decide that you want to use a different one, I can show you how to do that. I'm just going to resize this real quick to fit my image. And then I'm going to hide it. I'm going to come down to my subject layer here, and I'm going to click my quick selection tool and select subject up at the top. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my plus selection tool here because there's some parts that it did not select. You can fix that later, but if it's obvious, I like to do it beforehand. So for forehead here, select that a little bit more. Okay, and then go ahead and duplicate that layer, and then grab your room layer. You can make it visible again and drag it between those layers. Sorry, let's unselect there. Oops, I did that wrong. I'm gonna go back, sorry. I forgot to create my layer mask. So after you do your quick selection, you duplicate that layer, create your layer mask. There we go. And then you can make that layer visible and drag it in between. Okay, so what I was talking about for switching, you can just, if you decide you want to try a different room, you can right-click the digital layer and replace contents, and then you can just click a different room and that will swap it out for you. If you just kind of easily want to switch between to see what you think is going to work best for your image, your image is probably going to need editing anyways for the white balance and so forth to try to get it to match. So if you want to try to switch between rooms after you do a little bit of adjustment layers, that might be a good idea as well. But I'm going to go back because this is the image that I want to use. This is a backlit image, so I wanted a digital that had a lot of light coming through. And then obviously she's too big not obviously, I could make this work, but I want it to seem like she is hanging more in the center of the room and not so much closer to the camera. So I want her to be about here. And now as you can see, I need to extend my wrap up here. So I'm gonna go up to Filter and Liquify. And then I'm gonna zoom out a little bit and I'm just gonna drag that up, press OK. And then I'm gonna do it on the layer mask as well. Click the layer mask and I can just go to Filter and Liquify up the top again, and it's going to do the same thing that I just did right before that. Okay, so first things first, when I was talking about adjustment layers, my white balance is completely different on my subject than it is my background. So I'm just going to click on I don't want to change, I want to keep the look of my client. I don't want to change that. I want to change the room. So I'm going to click on the room. I'm going to go up to my adjustments and I'm going to add a color balance layer. And then I'm going to click this right here just to make sure that I'm only applying it to my digital background and not my subject. And then I'm going to make the room a lot more warmer to match the white balance of my subject there. So you can see it was a lot cooler before and now it is a lot warmer. Okay, and then this is where you could try to, now that I switched that a little bit, you could go back through and right click and replace contents and flip through and see if there's a room that you think would work better now that you have her where you want her placed, and it might give you a little bit better of an idea of which one's going to work best for you. Okay, I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to click on the layer mask on my subject here, and I'm going to zoom in, and we are going to clean up the edges, because as you can see there's edges that came through that I obviously don't want in my final image. This is going to look really pixelated because I'm very zoomed in here, but it makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to do my brush at my black brush at 100% opacity. Maybe do size 3. Like I said, I'm very zoomed in, so, and then I'm just going to go ahead and paint off the initial backdrop. If you mess up, if I go into her finger, just press X on your keyboard and that'll flip between your black and your white here. And then I would want to do white and just brush that back on. I'm not going to worry too much about the little tiny parts because the white is still coming through on the digital, so that one probably wouldn't have mattered. That one up there probably wouldn't really have made a difference. You wouldn't have been able to tell. But I can be picky when it comes to that stuff. Okay, just go around and you can fast forward through this part if you want. I like to show the whole edit. I don't want to fast forward through the edit myself, but you can fast forward through this part. Or come back to it after you go around and clean up all your edges. See, there's my white brush. I need to brush back in her arm right there. It kind of took it away a little bit. Okay, I usually don't touch the hair very much because it does nice feathering when you select it. But there is part of her forehead missing here. A lot of times when the highlights on your subject, when you use your quick selection tool, those do not get selected like they should. So I just want to go ahead and go in and make sure I brush all of those. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger because since the background is white on both the digital and my subject, it's not going to make a difference right there if I brush the original backdrop back on. But then once I started to see this is darker right here, then I need to go back and have a smaller brush so I don't have a halo, a white halo around my subject. Oops. I'm going to leave, there is kind of a white line, but it could be like the reflection of like the hairs on her body from the light coming from behind her. So I'm going to leave that for now. And I'm just going to brush, or use a little bit of a blur tool to blend that when I'm done. The wrap looks pretty good. Leg, some areas that need brushed back in here. My computer is working in overdrive right now because I'm also uploading files to Dropbox, so if it's loud, I apologize. Hopefully it's not distracting. Okay, go back over here. This is where her legs come together. That needs a little bit of work. Some of her toes missing. Don't want that. Just gonna overbrush that one because I couldn't tell where her toe stopped and started. Okay. Oops. I think we are good. Just go around here real quick. Okay, I can zoom back out. Okay, and now is where you want to try to, I could lighten her up a little bit, so I'm going to add a curves adjustment layer and create a clipping mask because I only want it to apply to her and not the whole backdrop. Brighten her up just a little bit. I could go to my layer mask and use a very like 10% black brush here and brush the wrap off a little bit to try to, if I can zoom in here, you'll see it a little bit better. Now I can slightly see the backdrop through this fabric because this fabric is supposed to be a little bit transparent. I personally, I don't want to do that because I think it's distracting, and she's kind of hanging in the middle of the room seemingly, so you wouldn't really, because of depth of field, you wouldn't really see that. I just, in case anybody was going to ask that, that's why I would not do that. I'm going to darken the wrap a little bit up at the top, so I'm going to add another layer on multiply blending mode. 10% opacity is good. I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard and grab this gray back here, and I'm just going to brush a little bit over that up there. And all that did was just add a little bit of shadow up at the top of the wrap where there's not as much light coming through as there is down here. And now this is where I would, which I only think I really needed to change the white balance for this image, and I like where it's at. But if you wanted to add more adjustments to try to blend your photo a little bit more, you might have to do that. I think I'm also going to grab a cream within this image somewhere. That looks like a good cream. This one does. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to add a solid color layer. And then I'm going to grab that. Oh, hold on. Grab that color again. Sorry, you need to be on, I need to be on my background layer. Grab that color. It's a lot more blue than I want it to be, so I want more like a cream. There we go. Then I'm going to come up, add a solid color layer, and if it's not that like that already, you can just come over here and grab it with your dropper. Press OK, and then I'm just going to bring it down. And I just like to do a blanket color over the entire image because I think it helps blend the digital and the subject together. And now I'm going to go, I'm happy with, I don't need to separate my backdrop and my subject anymore because I cleaned up all the edges and I'm happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten my image. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to take my blur tool. Its strength is 66. I don't really play around with that too much unless I feel like I need to. But I'm going to use a small brush on blur brush and just go around the very, very edge of my subject. And that's just going to get rid of that really thin white line. So that way I don't have to go around the entire image and edit out that little white line. I could use a minimum layer and get rid of that too, but I also don't want to, if you don't know what that is, it kind of just takes the edge off of your photo, but I don't want it to cut into my subject everywhere else on the image. So I'm just gonna brush this blur on a tiny bit where I feel like it needs it. I'm not even going to do it on the whole image. I'm just going to do it on parts that I feel need a little bit more blending into the backdrop. Our toes a little bit. You don't want to go overboard with this because then it's not going to look natural either. You just want a fall off, not completely blur all the edges of your subject. Okay, zoom out. And now again, if you wanted to add additional filters or anything to the image, you could do that now. If you wanted to play around with your hue, saturation, or your brightness, or your contrast, maybe add a little bit more contrast to this one since it's backlit. I could add a little bit more brightness. but that's completely optional. I think this looks good the way it is. I might go back and add a little bit more brightness, but that's just one way I like to, I would use these rooms. I did add lens blur to all of them and left a line. I added some blur, or actually I didn't add blur to this one. I would, because this would not be in focus back here. I forgot to do that in my edit. I would want to blur this floor back here because it would not be in focus with her hanging in the middle of the room. Okay, that's better. So make sure, so I'll go back into this one and show you. The whole room, I added nice fall off bokeh blur to all of the images, and then I left a part of the floor in focus on all of them. So if your subject isn't hanging, if you're just placing them on the floor like a regular digital backdrop, you would want to place them within the image where the floor is in focus. You wouldn't want to place them like up here where the floor is blurred, because it's not going to look realistic at that point as a digital backdrop. If you have any questions, you can send me a message. If you are a studio photographer, I would love for you to join my group on Facebook. I will link it in the description. Also head over to the YouTube channel if you're not already on there watching this, and subscribe for more free tutorials just like this one. Hi guys, I wanted to come back to this edit because I got a couple questions on the reflection that I did for the final image for this. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't include the reflection in the tutorial because it's not mine. It's called the Flood plugin. I don't know if they have a free version anymore. I know Flood 2 is a paid plugin. But I just want to show how I finished the image that I'm using for samples using the Flood plugin. If you look it up, who is it by? Flood plugin it's called Flaming Pear. If you Google that, you can find it. And sometimes installing the plugins into Photoshop can be a little tricky, but they do give step-by-step instructions on their website how to do that. So how I used it for this image, I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate my image. I like to duplicate it so I can brush off if I need to. And then I'm going to go up to filter and down to my Flaming Pear and Flood. And now you can play around with all of this. This is like the water reflection and stuff too. I'm going to press cancel real quick because I didn't want to really click all that. I just wanted to show you. I'm not going to... So I'm making this look like it's kind of just an ice reflection, so I'm not going to have any waviness. I have that all the way down to 0. And then I added a lot of blur to this as well. And then you can change where you want it to be. Like I could have it come all the way up here, but I want it to seem, she's hanging like in the center of the room. The floor is not right here. It's down further. So I'm gonna put this back at 77 where I had it. This right here is, I'm gonna leave it on brown because I kind of want the richness of the reflection in there, but you could, I'm gonna copy this real quick so I can remember what color this is, but you could put it to white and see how that just kind of changed the brilliance or the brightness of your blur there. But I want it to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to leave it where it is. I have my blur on 66. As you can see, if I bring it down, it's much more of a defined reflection. You can do that if that's what you want, but the floor on this digital backdrop is not very, it's reflective, but it's not like super flat shiny, so I want to add quite a bit of blur to that. And then I'm going to just go ahead and press OK. And then wait for that to work. Okay, and then there's our reflection, and I did not add enough blur back into that, so I'm going to go right back up. And add more blur. I think I had it at 66. Press OK. Okay, and now I'm going to create a layer mask on there because as you can see, like I don't want it to be I don't want it to be all the way over here on the side. So I'm going to take my black brush at 100% opacity, and I'm just going to feather brush that off of there a little bit, because I just want it to seem like that's the reflection on the floor. I don't want it to seem like there's water in here at all. I just want to add that little bit of reflection. I'm even going to brush off her hand just a little tiny bit. Oops. I meant to brush that back on a little bit. And then you can even bring down the opacity on that a little bit if you wanted to. Very subtle reflection. I just wanted to kind of bring that onto the floor just a little bit. I'm even going to brush it off a little bit more, and I'm going to lower my opacity on my brush because I want it to be subtle. But that's how I did that. I had a couple people asking. So that's it. You could play around with that flood plugin if that's something you want to add for the reflection on the floor.